Alright, now that we have an idea of the different parts of Adobe Premiere's editing workspace at least, let's go ahead and talk about some basic editing. It's not as hard as you might think. We just need to know some basic tenets of editing. Specifically, what's considered marking in and marking out. Now, the process generally works like this. What we want to do is start with what's called an assembly cut. An assembly cut is simply where we're grabbing raw pieces of footage and laying them out on a timeline. That's where we'll start in this video. Marking in and marking out is where we take a raw piece of video and then actually decide where we would like, or what pieces of that raw video we would like to bring in. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this is done. So in our timeline, in our workspace, if you're not seeing what I'm seeing, once again we'll reset our layout, and here's all of the footage that I've got laid out. Now your footage is certainly different, but you can see that I've built quite a bit on the timeline for this particular piece. What I want to do is just do a basic assembly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a clip to begin a new sequence. Now, let's define a term. A sequence is essentially a new timeline that we can start laying clips out on. Creating a new sequence means that we will be able to start building a new narrative or a new story. Now, sequences can be laid inside of each other, but we'll discuss that in a later video. So, if I want to create a new sequence, the first thing might be finding the initial clip that I want to use. So let's say this is, or we'll use one we haven't used before. And I can tell that we haven't used it because as I move over, you'll see that I've got the grayed out audio, and I see that no video is being used, as opposed to clip 4 or clip 12 where both video and audio is currently being used because it's blue. Double click it to bring it up in our source monitor. Now that it's in our source monitor, what we want to do is isolate the section that we want to use in our video. We do this by going in and marking out the parameters that we want to use, or the sections that we want to use. So for example, I want to catch the student yawning. I'll scrub the playhead until I see that she's just about to start yawning, and then I'm going to hit mark in. It could also be the shortcut I on your keyboard. And then I'm going to move down the playhead down the time ruler until she is done yawning, about right there. And then I'm going to mark out. Now you'll see that the duration, the in and out duration, has changed and now tells you exactly how long this clip is. 2 seconds 15 frames. Our playhead is at 7 seconds, and we can still scrub through this. If we wanted to adjust this selection, we could simply grab either the out point or the in point and drag it one direction or the other to fine-tune our selection. Once we have this selection done, we're ready to start bringing it into our timeline. We do this if we want to bring the video and audio by grabbing in the middle of the source monitor, and because we want to create a new sequence, we're going to bring it down to the new item box in our project panel. This looks like a little sheet of paper next to the trash can. When we drop it off here, we're going to create a new sequence that's named and set up for that initial clip. I'm going to zoom in by selecting the timeline and pressing the plus button. And now you can see, if I move the playhead, that my clip is here in its own timeline. We're ready to start building an assembly cut. We've got our very first clip. If I wanted to break it out or to see what it looks like, I can move into V1, double click, and there is a thumbnail of our video. If I wanted to see the audio, move into A1, double click in this empty space, and there's the waveform for the audio. Now, in an assembly cut, I'm just going to be getting the rough cuts first. An assembly cut is a good place to begin, laying out the items that you think you're going to need for your story in an order that makes sense narratively. You can always go back and clean up these cuts, and in fact you absolutely will before your final project is done. The assembly cut is your rough draft. So, jumping in to our timeline, we see our first clip on the timeline. We can scrub through it with a playhead. We can go up into our program monitor and do the same. Now that we've got the first clip in, let's select another. We're going to go to clip 6. Double click to open in our source monitor. Find the segments that we want. So we had that nice close shot in our first clip. Let's go out to this nice shot that shows through the handlebars of our camera. We're going to mark in, move down the timeline, mark out. That's a pretty quick clip. That's only 27 frames. That's less than a second. Perhaps we need more. Let's give it a good couple of seconds here. There we go. 2 seconds, 1 frame. Understanding the duration of each clip before you bring it in will help you not bring in clips that are either too long for your project or too short to be effective. Just keep that in mind. Now that we've got this 2-second selection, let's go ahead and bring it into our timeline. We can do this very quickly and easily by making sure that our snapping is on, by making sure it's blue, grabbing in the middle of the source monitor, and dragging down into our timeline. As long as I'm holding this this clip, it will follow me, and you can see that it has both video and audio. Now, because snapping is on, as I get close to the first clip, it's going to connect the second clip to the first, just like that. And now I have the beginnings of a sequence. We can go in and do this again. Let's see a reverse angle for our anchor desk. We will mark in, mark out. That's 6 seconds. That's probably a bit long. So I'll grab the endpoint, shrink it down. Let's get a couple, maybe 3 seconds. That's not bad. Drag it down, link it in. And I would just continue this on in an assembly cut. If I decided, and we'll do one more. This is, so we'll get mark in, mark out. This is about 1 second. Let's give it a little bit more. There's about 3. And boom. Now I have 4 shots all laid out in a row. To be clear, I'm grabbing in the middle of the source monitor and dragging down to the timeline. If I grabbed this icon, I would drag down video by itself with no audio. I'm going to hit delete to delete that one. If I clicked on this icon, I would drag down audio with no video. There may be times when you'd want to do this, but I want both, which is why I'm going to grab in the middle of the video and drag it down to the timeline. So that's what I've done here. Now that we have this sequence, let's talk about reorienting and reorganizing the sequence. So we have 4 shots. We've got these 2 that kind of match each other, and then we've got these 2 of our anchor at the desk. Now that we have this, if we would rather perhaps start from this wider shot and then cut into a closer, that's easy enough to do. We simply can grab one of these clips, drag it down the timeline, and then reorganize the order that the clips are going in. This is why it's called an assembly cut. We go in and we actually just assemble the narrative the way we think we need it to be. Now, we're not worrying about transitions, we're not worrying about sound effects or color balancing, music, any of that kind of stuff. We're just trying to build out the narrative in a way that makes sense. So, in here we can go in and reorganize or reorient the clips however we want. If we decide that one of these clips is perhaps too long or too short, we can always adjust that as well. So for example, if I say, you know what, this first clip I actually think it's just a little bit longer than I want it to be. I want to end there. What I can do is move my mouse with the selection tool. I can move my mouse to the end of this clip until I see this icon, and then drag it in to where I think it needs to be. Now if you pay attention to your program monitor up here, what you're going to see is what was previously the first shot of the next clip in the right monitor, and the last shot of the clip that I'm adjusting in the left. This is beneficial so that you actually can see how these two will connect. So for example, our girl yawns, and then we cut over to this wider shot. How do I bring everything back together though? An easy way of doing this would be to control click and then ripple delete. That would bring everything together. I'm going to Command Z to undo. I also have the opportunity to use my track select forward. So for example here, if I click this clip, it will select everything in my timeline from that clip forward. Now I can simply drag these back together. Oop. Try that one more time. Boom. And drag these back together. And now my sequence is good to go. So that's an easy way of actually orienting or adjusting the sequence. You can do this in reverse as well. So for example, if I wanted to make a clip longer, select all of these, give myself a little bit of space, extend a clip, and then drag them back together to make a nice sequence. So that's some basic assembly editing in Adobe Premiere. Next time we're going to get to some more specific editing that you might use after your basic assembly cut.